Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Does anyone remember the name of this chapter? It has the word devotional in it. Close. Instruction has the word instructions in it. Whose instructions? Kapila's instructions on, yes, on devotional service. So it's a really beautiful, very inspiring chapter for all of us, because that's what we're attempting to do with our lives, is to practice devotional service. So it's very relevant. So we're going to do 10 verses, and we can have mics ready. We'll pass it out. We can all take turns reading. So I'll begin with the first one. By following this course, and this is the verse that we're going to come back to read at the end, so just take note of that. By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy, and he is constantly bathed in a stream of tears occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity.
When the mind is thus completely freed from all material contamination and detached from material objectives, it is just like the flame for a lamp. At that time, the mind is actually dovetailed that of the Supreme Lord and is experienced as one with him, because it is freed from the interactive flow of the material qualities.
And just to pause there for a moment, just to clarify, we become one in interest with Krishna, right? We become one, aligned with Krishna. It doesn't mean becoming one with his form, as some people would interpret it from this verse. Okay, next.
Stated in the highest transcendental stage, the mind ceases from all material reaction and becomes situated in its own glory, transcendental to all material conceptions of happiness and distress. At that time, yogi realizes the truth of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He discovers that pleasure and pain, as well as their interactions, which he attributed to his own self, are actually due to the false ego, which is a product of ignorance.
So that's important to note, is that when we're going about our day having pleasure and pain, we can remember that's a result of false ego. Interesting, huh? And because we're identifying that this is me, and that's why we're suffering or enjoying, right? This is me, this body, this mind. So that's what false ego is, to identify as me in this case. Okay.
Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothing on his body.
Yeah, so it's very stark difference between a person who is intoxicated by a material intoxicant, right? You see them wandering around the street. Sometimes they're yelling out, right? Like, and they don't even know really what's happening to their body and whether they have clothes on or not. And then in contrast, the other extreme of that, the other end of that spectrum, is they're so absorbed in Krishna. Perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, because their mind, the soul is absorbed so much in Krishna that the body, it becomes irrelevant. That's at the most extreme advanced stage of spiritual life. Yes, exactly, like Lord Nityananda, right? He was called an avaduta, which means one who doesn't follow the normal practices. Just, you would consider someone maybe eccentric, right? Like, oh, they don't seem to mind, they don't follow what everyone else does. And that's what happens when one is really spiritually absorbed. Okay.
The body of such a liberated yogi, along with the senses, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfection stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus, he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream.
That's nice, isn't it? It says the Supreme Personality of Godhead takes charge of the body of a liberated yogi. And the devotee remembers that the body is not mine. So it's all the remembering that the body is actually meant for service. And so therefore I care for it in that mature way without overly identifying. Okay, next, text 39.
Because of great affection for family and wealth, one accepts a son and some money as his own. And due to affection for the material body, one thinks that it is his. But actually, as one can understand that his family and wealth are different from him, the liberated soul can understand that he and his body are not the same.
Okay. Next.
The blazing fire is different from the flames, from the spark and from the smoke, although all are intimately connected because they are born from the same blazing wood.
Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Parabrahma, is the seer. He is different from the Jiva soul, or individual living entity, who is combined with the senses, the 5 elements of consciousness and consciousness.
A yogi should see the same soul in all manifestations, for all that exists is a manifestation of different energies of the Supreme. In this way, the devotee should see all living entities without distinction. That is realization of the Supreme Soul.
So everywhere we move about in life, to see that every soul is connected to Krishna, that unity, right? Seeing the same spark, not the same in the impersonal way that we're all exactly one and we're all going to merge into a mass at the end, but the same part and parcel of Krishna energy is there within each person, right? Each person is part and parcel of Krishna. So therefore, devotee moves about life in that way. Yeah. And then text 43.
As fire is distinguished in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies.
There's a lot of fire analogies here, so if any of you are into building fires or having campfires, you can meditate on these things. Okay, text 44.
Thus, the yogi can be in the self-realized position after conquering the insurmountable spell of Maya, who presents herself as both the cause and effect of this material manifestation and is therefore very difficult to understand.
Okay, and that thus ends that chapter called Lord Kapila's Instructions on Devotional Service. Okay. So we'll go to text 34 and we'll read the Sanskrit here. Evam haro bhagavati pratilabdha bhavo bhaktya dravadridaya utpulaka pramodat Otkantya bashva kalaya muhur adyamanas. Tachapi chitta badisham shanakarviyunkte. Evam haro bhagavati pratilabdha bhavo. Bhaktya dravadridaya utpulaka pramodat. Otkantya bashva kalaya muhur ardyamanas. Tachchapi chitta badisham shanakar viyunkte. Okay, let's do the word for word together. Evam, thus, Haro, towards Lord Hari, Bhagavati, the personality of Godhead, Prati Labdha, developed, Bhava, pure love, Bhaktya, by devotional service, Dravat, melting, Hridaya, his heart, Utpalaka, experiencing standing of the hairs of the body, Pramodat, from excessive joy, Otkantya, occasioned by intense love, Bashva Kalaya, by a stream of tears, Muhu, constantly, Ardyamana, being afflicted, Tat, that, Cha, and, Api, even, Chitta, the mind, Badisham, hook, Shanakai, gradually, Viyunkte, withdraws. There's a lot of Sanskrit words in here that you probably know, right? So the more that we know the meaning, then the more it becomes joyous to sing the verse. So translation, we'll read this together. By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy, and he is constantly bathed in a stream of tears occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity. Purport. Here it is clearly mentioned that meditation, which is an action of the mind, is not the perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. In the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the higher stages, there is no question of using the mind. A devotee becomes accustomed to serving the Supreme Lord by purification of his senses. In other words, the yoga principles of meditation are required as long as one is not situated in pure devotional service. The mind is used to purify the senses, but when the senses are purified by meditation, there is no need to sit in a particular place and try to meditate upon the form of the Lord. One becomes so habituated that he automatically engages in the personal service of the Lord. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga, or lifeless yoga. For the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord, but when he is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called sabija yoga, or living yoga. One has to be promoted to the platform of living yoga. Nishta, can you read the second paragraph?
One should engage in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. The stage of Premanjana Charita can be attained by developing complete love. When one's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service is fully developed, one always sees the Lord, even without artificially meditating on his form. His vision is divine because he has no other engagement. At this stage of spiritual realization, it is not necessary to engage the mind artificially. Since the meditation recommended in the lower stages is a means to come to the platform of devotional service, those already engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are above such meditation. This stage of perfection is called Krishna consciousness.
Thank you. Okay, Oma Gyana Timirandasya, Gyananjana Shalakaya, Chakshur Umadithamyena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. So I want to cover three areas. First, talk about this progression from artificial to real. What does that look like? What is that? When Prabhupada says artificially, right? Devotees in the beginning are artificially meditating on the form of the Lord. Interesting expression. And then I want to talk about how does Krishna experience our artificial, quote unquote, artificial endeavors, right? What is that? What is Krishna's perspective on that? And then how can we attract Krishna? And that's going to be a question I'll ask you. So artificial leads to real, right? So first in Bhakti Yoga, there's an artificial practice of Krishna consciousness. And when we say artificial, what we mean is that we've been in the world for so many lifetimes that it becomes natural to center myself. Me, I want, it's all about me, right? So that becomes the natural feeling. And we've been in that state for so long, the soul is completely consumed in self-identity, self-absorption, self-enjoyment, selfishness, right? So to now redirect our attention to Krishna, it feels artificial. Wait, what? I don't know how to do this. I have to learn how to do this. And I was thinking of the analogy of, I'm sure, okay, who here knows how to ride a bike? Raise your hand if you know how to ride a bike. I think everyone pretty much knows how to ride a bike. It's common. What did you ever have the experience when you were first learning? Did you ever use those little training wheels on your bike? Do they do that in Europe as well? Little training wheels, yeah. And nowadays I see like more kids with the walking kind of bikes that, I don't know what they call those, balance bikes, I guess, to learn. So that I don't see training wheels as often, but back in the day, training wheels were very common for a child to learn. So they're riding the bike, but they're actually on three, they have support. So there's no issue of falling over. They feel secure. So that's how it is in our spiritual journey. We have these training wheels, sadhana bhakti. It's our training wheels, our practice. Here we are, we have the support, right? We have this, the rituals that we practice to develop our love for Krishna. Like Prabhupada said in the purport that, or in the verse actually, it said that the mind is used as a means to attract the Lord. It's like this, okay, I'm going to check the boxes, and when I follow the path, then Krishna's going to notice me, right? It's kind of it has a little bit of an artificial feel to it. I'm going to do these things, and then I'm going to become a pure devotee. And sometimes early on in our spiritual journey, we can feel very ambitious about it. I've heard some devotees say that when they joined, they thought, okay, I'm going to follow all the rituals, rules. I know what they are. And now in about a year, I'm going to, I have this goal, and in a year, I'm going to be a pure devotee. Just follow the formula, right? So in the beginning, it's like having training wheels. And then eventually we want to get to that place, like we all do with bike riding, where the training wheels can be removed. And now we can bike. And it becomes so second nature that we're biking. We're not even realizing we're doing all this intricate balance work. It's just, oh, I'm biking, right? Riding my bike. And that's how it is for the devotee as they progress in this journey. First, it feels artificial. It feels, I got to try so hard somehow to get Krishna to notice me. And it's like there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But in the purport, Prabhupada's describing that eventually the devotees become so natural that they're just automatically drawn to Krishna without having to try to think about Krishna. It's just an automatic process, just as bike riding is automatic when eventually we learn it. So although it's an artificial process, it's approved by Krishna, right? Krishna approves of this. This is sadhana bhakti, the practice, the training, the school, right? And our attempts are a little artificial, but they are bona fide. Krishna reciprocates with those. And so even though we always hear this thing that you can't force God to come to you, right? That's the demoniac people think that, oh, I'll just do this thing and I'll force God to come to me and serve me or give me these boons. But actually, Krishna is not, no one can force him to do anything. So even though the analogy of the fish and the hook was given, it's not, what it is that Krishna reciprocates with our artificial attempts, right? Our little endeavors. Here's our little steps. I'm going to show Krishna every day. I'm going to show up for him. I'm going to try to be sincere, have a spiritual intention. And Krishna reciprocates with those baby steps, just the way that a parent would reciprocate with a little child learning to walk. So I came across, I was reading this little pamphlet called The Presence. I think it's called The Presence of God. Something like that. It was created, written, kind of not written because it's a accumulation of several conversations and then some letters written by this monk, Brother Lawrence. He lived in France in the 1600s. And I just happened to be reading it yesterday, and I came across this quote from him that completely ties in with what we're talking about, where you start out artificially and then it becomes natural. So listen to this, okay? So Brother Lawrence, he says, in order to form a habit conversing with God continually and referring all we do to him, we must at first apply to him with some diligence, right? Diligence, which is what we're talking about, that regulated practice. Then, after a little care, we will find his love inwardly excite us to it without any difficulty. And that's exactly what Prabhupada in the purport is saying. At first, we have to be diligent, because diligence is relevant when we're, the only time you really need diligence is when something's not natural, right? You're like, oh, I got to be careful so I don't burn myself or so I don't fall off here, right? When you're learning to drive a car, you want to be diligent so that your car doesn't go off the road. But once you're an experienced driver, it doesn't take diligence anymore because it's so natural. So similarly, this monk, he was saying that after a little care that we put in, we find God's love inwardly excite us without any difficulty. So I thought that was really enlivening to see how from other traditions too, that when someone really applies themselves to bhakti yoga, to practicing service, and this particular monk, his whole life he tried to do in service to God, right? And all of his chores and his cooking. To keep in mind is that we're not getting to know Krishna for the first time. So in our practice, we might think, oh, this is hard work because I have to get to know someone I don't really know, and it feels artificial. I have to get to know, but the thing is, it's not actually like that. It's more like we have some wood, and there's an analogy given that if you have wood, there's actually the fire. The fire is already there within the wood. It just needs to be activated. That's the analogy that's given in the scripture. And so, or like with a well, I don't know if any of you have seen a well. Yeah. Sometimes to get it started, you have to pour a little water in to get the vacuum to form. And then that's called priming of the well. And then that gets the water. The water is always there. It just needed a little help to get it there. Similarly, our relationship with Krishna is always there. It just needs a little bit priming, right? A little bit of that. Okay, I don't need to work so hard to create a new relationship with Krishna. It's more, let me settle into this and rediscover my relationship with Krishna. Take some of that pressure off. Right? It's not artificial. It's not, oh, a new person I've never met and I got to kind of get to know them. It's awkward, like making a new friend or something, or going on a date. You're like, oh, I got to ask all these awkward questions and things like that, right? But with Krishna, he's already our best friend, and we just have to remember that. And so it's actually very natural. It comes very naturally. So how does Krishna experience what is Krishna's perspective on our little endeavors? We could say our little artificial attempts to connect with him. And when I say artificial, I mean because we're feeling a little artificial at the beginning, right? That's what I mean by that. So Krishna, it's helpful to remember that Krishna is so affectionate. There's a story in the part of the Bhagavatam where Dhruva Maharaj is talking to his mother, and his mother is telling him, go, I see, Dhruva, you're so distressed. He was having this trouble and he was so distressed. His mother was encouraging him, go find God, go find Krishna, because Krishna is so loving. In that purport, Prabhupada, I'll just read it to you because Prabhupada says, Krishna is so kind to his devotees that if you go to him, then the combined kindness of millions of mothers like me. So Prabhupada is paraphrasing the mother, right? He's saying, this is what she's telling her son, Dhruva. Krishna is so kind to his devotees that if you go to him, then the combined kindness of millions of mothers like me will be surpassed by his affectionate and tender dealings. Can you imagine millions of mothers? and we're talking about good mothers. We're talking about kind, loving, right? Unconditionally loving mothers. Imagine that, what that would feel like, being enveloped by so much love. And then she's saying that actually Krishna's love is surpassing that, millions of mothers, right? So that just gives an indication of how affectionate Krishna must be, how unconditionally accepting he must be, how unconditionally loving he must be. Because when we think of a good mother, we think of someone who will be there for us regardless of what we're going through, right? No matter what, they're there and they love us. They come unconditionally. That's a good mother, right? That's what we consider a good mother. So, because I realize that not everyone in this world has that. So it's a blessing to have that. But if we do have that, or if we've had a motherly figure in our life, then we know that sort of unconditional acceptance, right? So that's Krishna. That's how he looks at us. So he doesn't laugh at us. When we're on our training wheels, right? We're biking, we're like wobbly, and we're needing our training wheels, we're needing our little practices. We're okay, and now I'm going to sit down and do my japa. I'm going to try to chant attentively, but our mind's wandering, and we're basically stumbling like a little child stumbles when they try to walk. Krishna doesn't ever laugh or think, oh, why are they so, look how silly they look. It was kind of artificial, like trying, like groggy, trying to stay awake in Bhagavatam class, or right? Yeah, that would be the evil stepmother. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's another like classic. Yeah. Hey, that's a good. Yeah, it's a good analogy, because in there's many fairy tales where the evil stepmother is there. So the word mother is still in there, but we know it's not really, because they're constantly judging, right, and mean and vindictive. So yeah, that's a good analogy. Jealous. Is that what you said? Yeah, yeah. So Krishna doesn't laugh, he's there. And similarly, his devotees don't laugh, right? The devotees don't laugh at us when we're attempting our best. We've all been in the company of very incredible devotees, sadhus, right? Who are encouraging us, fanning the spark, right? Fan the little spark in us. They don't laugh when we're stumbling or saying to them, oh, I still have this desire and I keep tripping up on it, and I keep having this anartha and I keep wanting to criticize and whatever. We share our mind and confidence with our spiritual mentors and teachers. But they don't ever laugh, right? Because they know that that's a necessary first step, those training wheels. And eventually they keep fanning the spark in us until we can ride the bike alone, right? Not alone, because our gurus are always with us, but that we can ride in a natural way without artificialness. So Krishna, that's how Krishna sees us. He sees our sincerity. Oh, look there, that devotee got up for Mangalarti even though they're exhausted. He sees that, right? He sees that effort. And sometimes the ones who are struggling the most, Krishna is even more appreciative. Because, like, for example, if we talked this before, I think I mentioned this in the last class, if there was a teacher and they had all the students there, and they saw the one student was struggling to get to school every day, had to walk because there's no transportation, and walked 5 miles to get to school. Naturally, a teacher feels affection, extra affection. The teacher is not partial, but wow, there's a student who's doing so much effort. So the heart naturally feels wanting to reciprocate. So Krishna is like that too. And so when he sees like, oh, that devotee is really struggling with their health, or maybe their mind is really disturbed, and but still they're showing up for me, then what, how Krishna must feel so moved by that. So that's one way we can keep from feeling discouraged. Remember that Krishna notices that it's hard for us sometimes, and we still showed up. There's in the Bible, there's that story of Jesus was there. People were giving donations, right? Giving gifts, and a widow came. All these rich people were coming into the temple area, bringing gifts, and this one woman, she was an elderly widow. She gave 2 copper coins, and Jesus told his associates, "Notice that donation from this lady. Everyone else is giving in their wealth. This was kind of, I'm paraphrasing. He's saying everyone else is giving in their wealth. Okay, let's take a few dollars off of my wealth. But she gave in her poverty. She gave in her poverty, and she gave everything that she had. So those 2 coins were worth so much more than all these, rich people. They grab a few dollars off their top of their wealth, right? So that's the mood of God, the mood of Krishna, noticing, wow, that person's really trying their best. And so as representatives of Krishna, I just want to add this point. We're all going about our lives, right? We're representatives of Krishna. We're devotees of Krishna. Similarly, we don't laugh at the efforts of others, right? We are encouraging, and we see goodness wherever we look. So even in other religions, we see practitioners, we notice that sincerity. We can practice that. We can do that. We can, for example, I'll give you an example of how we can do this. It makes life very fun when we can do this. So let's say we're going to a rest stop on one of our trips. And as we walk to the door, someone opens the door for us. So one way to go about that is just go, oh, thanks, and walk in, and that's it. But if you want to make your life conscious, if you want to have like conscious awareness as you move through life, you can think, oh, there's a soul who held the door open for me. And here I am on a spiritual path trying to serve Krishna. Let me notice that and offer that to Krishna. Hey, Krishna, notice that person. He held the door for me. Can you please give that soul some kindness, some of your kindness? And that way we connect the daily mundane activities to Krishna, and we appreciate the souls around us and their sincerity. And so finally, I want to ask you a question. How do we attract Krishna's attention? And I want you to think about this for a minute. There's not one right answer. At first I was going to ask you, like, what's the best way to attract Krishna? But then I started thinking, there's many ways. And I'm curious I want to hear from all of you. What is one way to attract Krishna's attention in a positive or negative way? Krishna is also attractive sometimes. That's kind of a trick question, but maybe some of you caught that. But yeah, what's one way to catch Krishna's attention? Jonathan.
Approaching him with curiosity, or approaching Srila Prabhupada with curiosity.
Yeah, curiosity. So having a thoughtful, curious mind, right? Approaching them with, and specifically in a mood of open curiosity, right? Not judgmental, like, right? It's like, here I am, I'm open to hearing. Yeah. What's another way?
I would say sincerity, like kind of just like, and I guess that what goes along with that is like owning up to like your mistakes and like just accepting that you're not perfect. Just being like sincere about all of your service that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. That was actually another thing that I read in that pamphlet from that monk. He said, approach God with the realness of ourselves, meaning being honest with God, showing Krishna, here I am, full sincerity. I'm not hiding things away from you. I'm showing up completely as myself for you. Yeah. What else?
Like remembering him, like how you said in that example, like opening the door, and your first thought could be, thank you so much, and then walk right through. But to be Krishna consciousness, saying, thank you, Krishna, for sending me this servant, please bless them, please bless them as much as you bless me. Remembering him.
Yeah, so remembrance of Krishna. Yeah, it attracts Krishna to the person who's remembering, specifically because remembering Krishna is non-different from being with Krishna. It's the same. So yeah, that's really powerful. Good one. Yes.
But Maharaj, he said, the way that the Lord will reveal himself to us is when he's pleased with our devotional service to him.
Okay, yeah, so Prahlad said that. Yeah, when Krishna is pleased with our devotional service, he is drawn to us. Yeah. Okay, who hasn't shared yet? like to hear from all of you if you can, because there's enough different ways to attract Krishna that we can all share one thing. Yes.
I think preaching to others about his pastimes or just about the philosophy, I think that would attract him.
Yeah, sharing him with others really attracts him. That's one of the surest ways to attract Krishna's attention.
I think creating art, like creating any kind of art that it kind of inspires people to explore Krishna, like if it's a picture or something like that, or yeah,
Yeah.
or like maybe you're writing a book or you're writing poetry or something and it has to do with Krishna conscious.
Yeah, so attracting Krishna with using creativity for Krishna, right? You're using, like, art is coming from a creation, our creative efforts, using that for Krishna definitely attracts him. I want to note on that the name Krishna means all attractive, right? So art and creativity is coming from Krishna. And so Krishna is, yeah, he's pleased when we use our full potential of here's our creative energy, and we're going to use that, turn it back over to the most attractive person, right? And to help others feel inspired in the process. That's wonderful. Yeah, Nishta.
To Brandon's point, it's good if it's related directly to Krishna, but sometimes it's not even directly related. Like it's just like a video, like a fun video about the springs or something like a trip we went on or something, but it's still attracting people to Krishna house.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so in that connection, I want to mention, I went to Bhakti True Swami's disappearance festival in Deland the other day on the 4th of July. And one person commented that he is married to someone who's not really practicing Krishna consciousness. She's favorable, but she's not, doesn't consider herself a Hare Krishna, right? And Bhakti True Maharaj had come to their home. He had visited them. And this devotee noticed that he was sitting, you know, talking to the devotee's wife, and they were laughing and joking. They were kind of, she looked very happy and she was connecting with Maharaj. And the devotee commented that Bhakti True Maharaj and many other devotees also have this ability to connect with people even at their level. It doesn't have to be like preaching at them. And it's like making that human contact. And the wife of this devotee, she said, this is Bhakti True Swami became her favorite Hare Krishna. And his interaction with her wasn't even about Krishna. It was just talking to her about maybe the kitchen or whatever she was doing in her life and getting to know her as a person. So exactly in that way, that's another way to attract Krishna, is to be a friendly devotee in the world. Make friends, be friendly, right? Make connections. Any other thoughts? Anyone who hasn't? Yes, Nate.
I like what you said about struggle and how us putting ourselves in somewhat uncomfortable positions, taking some risks, actually enables us to grow a lot. You know, it enables our creeper to grow more, our creeper. And I was thinking that also in like 16 rounds, like it's supposed to sting a little. It's not supposed to like be like, you know, you're not always gonna see butterflies and rainbows, but it's that struggle that is attractive to.
Yeah, and because why? Why is the struggle attractive to him? I can comment if you like. So the struggle is attractive to Krishna because it then shows our desire to be with him. If there's no obstacle at all, it's just super easy, then okay, yeah, it's nice. People come for lunch, right? There's no obstacle. But if someone comes for lunch and they hiked over a mountain to get there, you think, wow, that's you know, loving. They took an effort, right? So similarly, when there's some struggle, it shows our sincerity. And again, going back to sincerity, shows our effort, shows Krishna that, yes, I really want you now, and that I'm going to do something a little bit out of my comfort zone for you to connect with you. Yeah. Any other? Yes. The struggle is real with a capital R.
I was thinking along the line with a lot of shared is being in a or acting in a mode of servant of the servant. Like that would has to do with authenticity also. Not trying to impress, but just try to be of service.
Yeah. Being the servant of the servant is especially pleasing to Krishna. Yeah. Again, it's showing I love you so much that I also love all your devotees, and I'm going to serve them because they're all so dear to you. So let me serve them. You know how Prabhupada would say sometimes the surest way to get to someone's heart is to pat their dog or say something nice about their child, right? To serve those who are dear to the person, right? So with Krishna, it's like that too. We serve those who are dear to him, and it's a sure way to get his affection. Any final thoughts on that? Okay, so we covered a lot of different ways to attract Krishna's attention. And I just want to add one more. Sometimes life is hard and we're struggling, and let's say we're sick in bed. I heard some devotees were sick, right? Let's say we're having a flu and we're out of it. And how do we attract Krishna's attention in that? How do we connect with Krishna in that moment? So we can use our mind. Sometimes we can't use our body, but we can use our desire. I wish I could connect right now. I wish I could serve Krishna. Let me think of a way I can do it in my mind. Let me think of an idea. That's a way to serve Krishna. That's a way to attract Krishna, is to use the power of the mind, right? We might not be in a place where we can actually do something, but we can daydream for Krishna. Let me think, how would I spread the movement? How would I do this? How could I share, right? And maybe it won't come to fruition, the tangible thing that I'm thinking. However, that's not gone to waste. Just imagining how I can help the Sankirtan movement, things like that. And so in that note, I wanted to share that many years ago, I was reading an old journal from maybe 10 years ago, and I went up to visit my relatives, my father's mother, and one of his brothers was there. And I was sharing with them about Krishna House because I was living at Krishna House at the time. And my uncle, he started to say, wouldn't it be amazing if you could come up with like a formula where you could franchise these to different locations and come up with like a list of all the ways that Krishna House has improved the town or the university area so that you could get other universities to also want to have Krishna houses on their campuses. And he's not involved in the Hare Krishna movement, right? He's not practicing, he's not even really religious. I don't think he's kind of neutral. And when I read that, I thought, there you go. That was devotional service. He brainstormed a way to help the Sankirtan movement. Like, how incredible is that, right? And so it's not just, there's expression, a castle in the air. When you just think of an idea, oh, well, that was just a castle in the air. That was nothing. It did nothing. Because in the material world, that is a castle in the air. It's nothing. But for Krishna, it's not nothing. That idea that someone just plugged in that moment, my uncle took part in the Sankirtan movement, right? He had this idea. And Krishna sees, okay, now there is a Krishna House franchise. Maybe my uncle gets a little benefit from Krishna for being part of that idea in his mind, right? At some point. So just to show that sometimes we can't maybe do things physically, or we might feel limited, but there's no limit when it comes to thinking about ways to serve Krishna. Yeah, and if we're sick, we can serve Krishna in our mind. Let me go down. I'm up in the ashram upstairs maybe, and I'm going down in my mind and offering obeisances to Gaurnitai. That's also service. And Krishna's not limited by, he doesn't need physical service. He wants our love. And so we can also serve him in our mind. So that kind of covers all the bases. Like if you're sick or if you are limited or whatever's happening externally, it's never, there's never not a way to connect with Krishna, right? It's always a way. So just to kind of conclude is that we talked about how artificial practice of the training wheels that leads to the real practice of the real connection with Krishna, which is like the natural way we would ride a bike. And then Krishna is pleased with our endeavors, even though they're little child steps, because he's so loving. He never laughs at us, and We can attract Krishna in so many ways, like we shared here, right? So many ways. And just a final point is that every person's going to do that in a different way. We're all unique, and Krishna likes that unique expressions of connection with him. So how we're going to attract Krishna is going to also be a product of our unique way of connecting with him, right? So yeah, it's not just one carbon copy answer. It's going to look specific for each of you. So maybe one comment or question, and then we'll conclude. Yes.
For the class. I just want to appreciate the end of the purport. Something very, very wonderful that Prabhupada brings up the very end. The value of Krishna consciousness, how he highlights that a little bit more. Yeah, since meditation recommended the lower stages a means to come to the platform devotional service, those already engaged, that part, those already engaged, and that's all of us. Like, it's not pure, but
yeah,
we are trying to purify. Those already engaged in trust and loving service of the Lord above such meditation. And then he calls that Krishna consciousness. So we are part of Krishna consciousness movement.
And he calls it stage of perfection. Yeah, so here we are. We're in perfect place. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, that's really nice. Really nice point. Okay, so I hope you have a wonderful breakfast and a day in service to Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi.